Hey everyone, so one of my final sub 60 in session videos today is going to be a lot more than 60 seconds. It's about Senate Bill 762, one of the last bills we're going to be considering this session about wildfire response. Rather than me going on about this bill, I want to share some footage that was sent to me by someone on the Mackenzie River fire and his firsthand account. Take a look. Here's what he had to say. The following are excerpts from a transcript piecing together my experiences in the initial hours of the Holiday Farm fire that decimated the Mackenzie Valley. What will resonate with me more than anything was the professional response from the crews that were on scene. I can't express the level of pride I have in our people and the work they did that night. I began picking up radio traffic of active fire, blocked roads, and requests for evacuation assistance. As I got closer, the glow grew, and dispatchers calling out locations of evacuees trapped or needing assistance grew more frequent. Around milepost X, the ridgetops were burning, and I soon found myself driving past fire next to the roadway. The steady stream of westbound evacuees was staggering. The gravity of the situation began to sink in, seeing the ferocity of the fire. It seemed like the radio frequency was an endless stream of addresses and campgrounds where people were calling for help. I quickly found myself in deteriorating visibility with fire on both sides of the highway. At this time, I saw headlights behind me, and all of a sudden my passenger door opened, and a distraught woman reporting her 6-year-old daughter was trapped a mile or two up begged me to take her as we proceeded up the highway with fire on both sides. She asked for my phone to call her sister, who was with her daughter, screaming and telling me they had survived one of the fires in California. Her desperation drove us deeper into rapidly deteriorating conditions until in zero visibility a tree fell in front of us. At this point, I made the hardest decision of my life to turn away. This decision would weigh on me throughout the night to a level I cannot describe. At this point, the other incoming units reported they were blocked by fallen trees and working to cut their way to us. Once everyone was in the safety zone, we checked to make sure everyone was okay. Things got eerily quiet on the radio despite the growing roar of the fire around us. We learned that the fire had burned the radio tower, cutting off our frequency and cellular communications. I scouted my area to the town, which was fully involved in fire with exploding propane tanks everywhere. When I drove into town, the fires were still intense, with lines hanging down along with other hazards. I was struggling to navigate the town as it was unrecognizable. I went back to the highway to reorient. It was surreal to be lost in a town completely on fire. Once I made it through town, I could communicate that the safety zone could be evacuated through the fire area in an emergency. At this point, I continued to work my area, using the few crews I had to make the most difference. It was terribly difficult to see houses burn that we couldn't get to. As the sun came up, we were able to clean up and save a handful of houses. While working with an engine, they recounted going up the highway and returning picked up some girls and their aunt. These guys were able to save this family that I had to turn back from, and it felt like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders. I cannot describe the feeling of that experience. Maybe I don't understand it yet. Around 1400 hours, we learned that the OSFM and ODOT had cleared the highway and were coming to relieve us. When they arrived, we learned that we were not being relieved, but evacuated and leaving what was left to stand on its own. This is not normal, but then we had learned that there were not sufficient resources to address the risk to other communities, to include Springfield. We had lamented that while cut off, we had just fought through what would be Oregon's most devastating wildfire in history, only to learn that there were other equally as devastating fires in the state at the same time. Our drive down the valley of a childhood playground where I had many fishing trips was difficult. To see 2 out-of-town task forces fighting fires and not winning was surreal. It was a relief to exchange crews at fire camp, but being in the fight made it easier to ignore what had happened, and that is hard to reconcile. The only description I have is that this felt like a career's worth of tragedy over the course of 18 hours. I'd like to thank this battalion chief for sharing this with me. Reject partisan politics. Reject special interests trying to stake something out here. Do the right thing for Oregon, for her people, and for her firefighters. Urge your legislator to vote yes on Senate Bill 762.